Hi y'all, I'm Allison. We're going to go back in time and take a look at my very first reading journal. This is from 2021. So we're just going to do a flip through and I'm not going to waste any time. We're going to dive right in. I do want to point out this is a Tim Beatree Mary journal. Hopefully you can see that. And I absolutely love it. It has held up so well to all of my abuse. If you saw way back when, I did do a setup of this one. Naively, I thought I was going to put all of this information for every book that I reviewed, and you'll quickly see that did not happen. We've got our table of contents. Ooh, exciting, riveting content here. And here is the title page. I originally thought this journal would last me at least a few years. Nope, it just worked for 2021, which is okay. So the other day I finally did this, and you will notice a theme in my book: spacing. I need to take some time and space things out. But you know what? It's okay. This is what's for function more than form, and it really lived up to what I needed. So these were the favorite books that I had for each month, and I didn't limit myself to just one. If I had multiple, that was okay too. So there's the covers of them. And we go right into my little stats page. I ended up reading 165 pages. Here's the breakdown of how that was. 57 of them were 5-star reads. I had 3 DNFs and 18 flops, which were 2 stars and less. And then we have the longest and the shortest book. I did split it up between how many I purchased this year versus my vets. And then I have a list of the authors that turned up the most during the year. Over here is a monthly breakdown by physical, audio, and ebook, and then purchase versus unhauled. And I was hoping that, if I'd hauled new ones, I would unhaul as well. Didn't work out that way, but that's all right. Okay, then here was my reading goal spread. Originally, I planned to read 52 books for the entire year because I had been on a reading slump and hadn't been reading at all for 10 years. Easy. So I thought this was a very reasonable goal. And as you saw before, I way overshot it. But that's the beauty of a bullet journal. You can just add pages as you need to. And I use an old trick with threading. So down here it shows that if I go to page 80, then the rest of the books will continue on. Like so. So what I did is, there's actually a rhyme and reason to this. Down here we have every month of the year, and everything is color coded, and I wrote below it what marker it was so I could easily grab the same one. I can easily tell at a glance. I read very few in January. March was a good reading month. August was a good reading month. And this also is a key that is used throughout the rest of the book. As I colored it in, I just listed the books in order as they were completed. So from here on out, the rest of the book, whenever it says number 1, it is referring to Green Mansions. If it has number 52, it is referring to Death Mask. And these colors are consistent all throughout too, which you will see here in just a second. Here are the ratings using the color system. So these are the corresponding covers. I don't like how this layout turned out at all. You'll see this year was a lot of experimenting. I hadn't done one of these before. I had done some reading spreads in my bullet journals, but obviously this was my very first reading journal. So here I decided not to stagger them, but I still don't like it. I went down 56 and then came back up here. And that changes when we get to page 82. But we're just going to go sequentially. So after the covers, I had a list of the new books that I bought, and a section for ones that were gifted to me, and then ones that were being unhauled. So the date, the title, where I bought it, and the cost. Later I dropped the cost. Over here I added a why I was unhauling it and where I unhauled it. Here is my mess of a series tracker. Again, this was all a work in progress. Not happy with the way the title came out at all. This was functional, but it's not very pretty to look at. I just got the name of the series, you know, a square for each book. If it was a novella, it was a triangle. Companion, like spin-off, was a circle, and anthologies or, you know, collection of shorts was a diamond. And they were just colored in, again, by using the key code from back here for my colors of the month. So I can easily tell at a glance, red in January, then February, and you can see how long I skip between, which I do like that aspect of it. And our series tracker continues on page 132, which we will get to later. This was really the first spread that I was really proud of and happy with. I discovered in January TBR Games and BookTube. So I joined Read Your Bookshelf. This is what prompted everything. And she had done it in 2020. So I did both challenges simultaneously. And as I did it, I colored it in and marked it. And I love how this turned out. And I also discovered Completely Melanie's TBR Knockout at the same time. These were colored to match the covers of the actual books as closely as possible. And as I read it, I read in the title and colored it in. If you look close, you can see the prompts were written in a very small, thin line. And then I went straight into January's. This is my monthly layout. This was all my TBR was. Oh, back in the good old days. And I wasn't even setting a TBR. All I did was add a list of possibilities. I picked my first book, and when I finished that, I moved to my next prompt and found that book and just went that way. And I really missed doing that. That was fun. Down here, I've got monthly stats. I broke it down in physical, hardback, paperback, new, DNFs. I listed the genres and then the authors and broke it down by age. Over here is just the start and date finish. Oh, and I had series started over here. This gets moved over here and authors get dropped. This layout predominantly is what I still use to this day with just some tweaks. And I also have a favorite book of the month. January, I was decisive. It was one book. And then when we turn the page, these are, again, using January's color and the same numbering from before. You can see where I was using this flip out guideline, and I realized that was just too tedious, too much work, and it wasn't feasible to keep up with it. I toyed with making a sticker for that and putting it down for each book and then just kind of circling and checking. But I didn't want my book all bulky with tons of stickers added to it. So I quickly dropped that and just added relevant information, and this section gets shorter and shorter as we go out throughout the book. And then we go right into February. I read a lot more books in February. I did 10 because this is when I discovered Buzzword. I didn't even know about Buzzword yet. And you can see the monthly stats pretty much the same as far as what I was keeping track of. I did drop the authors already. Here's where the challenges, and I went back into January. Currently reading, and again, a list of possibilities. I was still picking them out as I finished each book. Then I would pick the next one. And I had, again, one favorite of the month. And then here's just some simple notes. What I used to do for myself was just write down notes as little reminders without giving anything away. And now I write much more detailed notes. Okay, here is where I got Owl Crate Jr. I started it in February and I went ahead and back ordered the January box. And each month I just wrote it down. And later on down the road, I started putting a check mark if I read the book and adding the star rating so I could see if I was actually enjoying what was being sent by this subscription. And I included anything specific about the book, like if it was signed, had an author note, a sticker that had a reversible dust jacket, that kind of stuff, as well as the date I received it and when I finally got around to reading it. Kind of messy, but again, this is more form over function. It's not the prettiest thing to look at, but it kept the stats that I want. And I also joined Once Upon a Book Club at the same time. Did the same thing, but I added how many gifts came with them. And again, I did pretty good keeping reading my Once Upon a Book Club. And this was a note on shipping delays thanks to COVID. Here's where I discovered Buzzword, so I made up my first tracker for that. And I have A to Z with the titles and authors. These were for books that I read outside of these challenges. So this was essentially for all of my mood reading. And these colors again correspond back to my chart back at the beginning, but I'm using ballpoint pen. So again, I could see at a glance which month I read the most of them. Here we go into March, which is pretty much the same. I've dropped the possibility list now because I joined some readathons. Yeah, there we go, readathons. And I had 2 favorites that month. I did start tracking a series and started and finished over here. And again, my running total of start and date. And here's where I was going to be keeping track of all Chantel's readathons. And I don't know if she didn't do another one and I missed it, or if I was just too busy to join in. And then completely Melanie, she does one every season. I joined the first 2 and I didn't do the other 2 in the month. And this just goes right back to continuing on with reviews of what I read in March. And these were more books that I bought. More reviews. In my notes. I tend to write a lot more if it's a book I didn't like, and these were the reasonings for why I did not finish these 2. It's very rare for me to give up on a book completely. Here's when I started getting Owl Crate boxes, and this was their Advent. And this was a list of the books that came with it, so I just tucked that in here. Again, I've read a few of them. The ratings were pretty good. And here we go with April. All of this is pretty much exactly the same as we've seen the previous months. But the awesome thing is I did keep up with it religiously. Every time I started a book, I noted it down. At the end of the month, I did my stats, which is awesome. Which shows it's working. More new books. We won't talk about that. And here we go into May. This is when I started playing my Sims TBR game, which was long before I actually started doing videos on it. So you can see I'm getting bigger and bigger TBR. I read 16 books that month. And I actually finished one in April, and it was counted for the wrong month, so that had to be changed. And here's my monthly breakdown and my reading and start dates. If I didn't finish the book within the month, I just drew an arrow, bullet journal style, and showed that it was finished the following month. More very brief notes to myself. I did not like horror stores, so I have more to say on that. By the way, these journals come with 3 bookmarks. I absolutely love them. The paper is really thick, so as you'll notice, my markers, nothing is bleeding through. You can't see where I wrote June, and that's really heavy. Here was June's layout. I did 17 books that month, and I had 1 favorite in an entire series, so I only put the first book on the front, though, I think. And here's where I started getting a regular Once Upon a Book Club. And I've read most of those for that year, which, yay. More reviews with some stickers. And here is where I finally reached up to book 66. So I threw in a duplicate of this with my new list and my new colors. And here is where I started taking the covers all the way across the page, and I think it looks much neater that way. One thing I didn't point out was when it's a 5-star, I use the gold pen, so those would easily stand out on a glance. Again, not too really happy with the spacing, but it is what it is. Again, a little messy, but it's okay. So even, you know, if you've been thinking of doing one of these and you're like, oh, it won't look as pretty, it doesn't matter. As long as it works for you, that's the most important thing. And this became my Bible. So here we go with July. I was doing a readathon. Didn't have room here, so I put that the prompts were on page 40. And that was the one that we saw way back for Melanie. Completely Melanie. More reviews with the month, the color of the month. And then we get into August. This is where I started Just Spin It and BookTube. This is when I did my very first video. And here were the reviews for August. And you'll notice my notes get much longer because I was now starting to talk about books on my channel. And it was no longer just something to refresh my memory. Here we've got September. You know, if I didn't finish the book, I put an arrow to show it was moved to the next month. And in fact, I added that over here, continued from last month, or if it was pushed to next month. And we've got our arrows to indicate that. And this is pretty much all the same. I think the placement may change a little bit. And we've got some new friends tucked down in here. I had some blank space. That's the other beautiful thing about it. You can just throw in whatever you want, whenever you want. Here was October with some little stickers. You'll see that when we do my 2022 flip through, you'll see how much this has all changed and evolved. But this turned out to be a good starting point. So here's the end. I made it to 165 books, and we only have the very tail end of the year back here with the rest of the covers. Again, some spacing issues, but it's all good. And then here's where the series continued. This, if we go back to page 15, here was that one, and here's a slight improvement. This is more legible, but again, kind of a hot mess. And we go continue right on with the reviews. It's a very busy month, but this is when I started The Wordy Traveler. And I didn't do anything fancy for this one. I just threw this in at the last second in some blank spots. Here's November. Again, not much of a change. I didn't really read much of my own TBR games, but I finished up everything that was left from October. And I made sure that I was able to color my pretty trackers at the beginning. Like I said, this was I was in this book constantly flipping back and forth, and it has held up so well. The paper is so thick. There's no ghosting. Here we are at December. So look at that. And I guess I played with the colors because it was Christmas. So alternated between red and green. And that was the end of the book. Back here I do have, you know, just doing some little color swatching and some blank pages, and I was making notes for things I wanted to add to the following year or changes I was considering. Here's where I was kind of laying out some graph ideas that you will actually see in my next reading journal. So that was it. The other thing this has is a pocket in the back, which this is some series reading orders and some extra stickers. So that was 2021, my first one. It did exactly what it was supposed to do. It gave me a jumping off point, and you will see vast improvements in the 2022 journal that hopefully I will be back relatively soon with. I don't know what order anything's going up in anymore, so it might be the next video, or there might be some stuff in between. Just know it will be up soon. I hope y'all enjoyed this, and I will catch you next time. Bye now.